Wait, is this going to be live?
Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to another edition of the Cover One Buffalo podcast. Yes, this is a live show for anyone out there asking, Russ. So welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Quinn. With me, as always, Greg Thompson, and we are happily joined by Cover One's own Russel Brown tonight. Greg, how you doing, my man?
Doing well. It's an exciting week. Can't even describe my excitement for this fantastic matchup between the Lions and the Bills.
The fact that you're stretching for words to describe tells me that you're sarcastic. For all those that can't see the video, Russ, my man, it's been a while. It's been since right after the draft since we've had you over here on our version of the Cover One podcast. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing well. I did not know this was live, so that's why you probably heard me at the beginning. Is this live? What is the odds that was perfect timing? But hello, everybody. Appreciate you having me on. Yes, things are good. It sucks being a Lions fan. It also sucks being a Bills fan, which I am a fan of both, if you didn't know. So life is hard for me. That's why I love the draft. But the last 27 years have been rough as a football fan, and the Lions continue to torment me. So let's jump into this thing.
Yeah. Well, for the people that don't listen to our other podcasts, could you fill us in a little bit on you and the podcast that you run here for Cover One and the work you do here at Cover One?
Yeah, so I'm a national scout for us on Cover One. So I focus basically primarily on the NFL draft, but I try to, dip my toes into the player evaluations of the NFL guys. As far as the podcast, Cover One, the NFL Draft podcast, it's all NFL draft stuff year round, every single week, pretty much every single week, pretty much from like October till the draft. It's every week. So join me and Christian Page on a weekly basis, Tuesday nights. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft. Give me, questions, comments, concerns, and I'll answer them on the podcast. If you want it on the podcast, or I can answer it right there and then. But yeah, no, I've been with Cover One since a year and a half now. So it's been good. I've enjoyed it. Eric's a great guy. You guys are awesome. And the fan base and the support that we get is fantastic. So I thoroughly enjoy being a part of Cover One.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of Cover One, we had some big news here this week with the addition of Jordan Reed. For any of you out there that follow the draft and follow player evaluations, the type of stuff that Eric does, you probably know Jordan. And he's going to be on your podcast as well, Russell. I think you were just saying right before the show started. So he's added to the team with our guy here, Russ. We got Cole Thompson, Christian Page, Alan Yulee. So the content that is coming out of Cover One just continues to get better. And I keep saying it on these shows because for us Bills fans, the season's really about this, final games of development, but then it's on to draft and free agency and evaluating people. And if you're looking for evaluations on guys, cover1.net is the place to be. So head over there, get all your content, get ready for the draft. I hate to do it. I usually say I don't look at draft prospects till the final game of the season. But I was on YouTube the other day finding some game tape of guys because there's really not that much to be excited about for the rest of the season. But Greg, you want to tell the people here real quick about the premium subscription before we get too far into this?
Absolutely. It's my favorite part. It's a great collection and community of mostly Bills fans that are in there and really connected to where we're going as a franchise, looking at the long-term view of things, looking to have a little more involved discussion than what you can devolve into on, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or wherever, or Reddit or wherever you're interacting with Bills fans. It can get a little crazy sometimes, and it's hard to kind of filter what's going on. So it's nice to be able to have a group of people that are, really engaged, understand what we're trying to do. And there's still a lot of healthy debate. Eric and I argued last night for almost 2 hours on how to build franchises and whether you should always go best player available or positional value. And there's still a healthy debate and argument, but it's with people who know what they're talking about and are involved in it and not just throwing in their 2 cents. It's people that really care about what's happening. And, I welcome anybody to come, take a look and listen to what we're doing. It's an awesome community and a lot of fans who are really connected.
Yeah, unlike on Twitter today where I was told somebody really thinks sincerely that they would do a better job at being the GM of a NFL football franchise than Doug Whaley was, which Whaley had his flaws, but silly things get said on the Twitter. is my point. So anyway, head over to cover1.net, find the premium subscriptions, and you can get started there. We'll talk about it here more at the end of the show. Let's get right into this really exciting prime NFL matchup. I'm sure the league's really excited about this one to show off the new NFL. But there's some things I want to get talking about because I think Rob Quinn wrote something this summer here at Cover One about the comparison that he was making between Josh Allen and Matt Stafford. So I think that might be fun for Bills fans to kind of see your opinion on Matt Stafford as we get into the offensive side of things. But let's start right at the baseline because you were talking before we got on. What's this injury report look like for the Lions? Because I think it's long, and I think that you were saying that's led to a lot of the issues that you're seeing right now.
Yeah, well, before we get into it, let's go into the glossary, okay? So Bills fans can understand what I'm saying because I'm going to talk into Lions terms here, okay? So when I say JBC means Jim Bob Cooter. That's our offensive coordinator. He's atrocious. That's all you need to know. That's his definition. He's bad, okay? My quarterback, number 9, Matthew Stafford, okay? I'll stick up for the guy every step of the way. Granted, I'm running out of excuses for the guy, okay? So bear with me as we get into him. Ziggy, that's Ezekiel Ansah. So if I ever say Ziggy, that's who I'm talking about. The guy's done. He's out. He's on IR. What else is there? Kerryon Johnson, if he plays, I call him Kerryon.
So you're not just telling us to carry on, gentlemen. It's
yeah, exactly. So if I say carry on, I don't mean like carry on the conversation. I mean, hold on. I'm talking about Kerryon Johnson. So, but no, in all reality, the injury report is a mile long. I mean, it is freakishly long. There's so many injuries right now. And I think part of it is maybe the intense practices that Matt Patricia was running all summer long. He had guys outside when we play indoors. Like in November, we were practicing outside for some reason, which didn't make any sense. But TJ Lang, starting right guard, he's out for the season. Probably his career is done. He's had a neck injury. He's had plenty of concussions, ankle injuries. So he's probably near the end here. He was a product of Eastern Michigan. He, grew up in, I want to say like the Brighton area. No, I'm sorry. He went to Brother Rice. So he was a local product coming home. It was supposed to end a little bit better than this because he went from Green Bay to here, but it just didn't happen. But they've replaced him with Kenny Wiggins, the backup right guard, who has been just terrible. He was a fit for the Chargers. He looked okay over there, but he's been just bad. Rick Wagner, he's got a concussion. That's our starting right tackle. Ziggy Ansah is out for the season with a shoulder injury. Jamal Agnew, our defensive back, who was a very talented punt returner and a special teams guy, he's done for the year. Michael Roberts, our starting tight end, that, by the way, was no threat at all. He's 6'7", 280. He's like a Mack truck, but he can't run a route and he can't catch a football. And he cost us the game against the Chicago Bears, not Matthew Stafford. I don't care what anybody says. But Michael Roberts, he's done for the year. It's just been bad. Marvin Jones, number 1 receiver, after Golden Tate got traded away, he's done for the year with a knee contusion. So plenty of guys. There's a lot of questionable guys. The one guy that's questionable, the 2 guys that are questionable that probably matter the most defensively, Deshaun Hand and Devin Kennard. They have been very consistent for us. Kennard can rush the passer. Deshaun Hand is very good in stopping the run and also, rushing the passer. Both those guys defensively, if they're not playing, it's going to be rough. And then Wagner's questionable at right tackle with concussion, and Kerryon Johnson, who's been struggling with the knee sprain, he probably won't be back either. So, I mean, we've got injuries literally all over the board. And I don't like to pinpoint it to injuries because every team has injuries. And regardless, like next man up, it should be something, but it's just like, the next man up for us is just awful. And it's just been bad. It's just very disappointing.
Yeah, the Bills have had it actually pretty good this year, considering how bad the team is as a whole. And we've talked about the lack of depth. So it's real nice that they haven't had too many injuries. Last week, obviously, losing Matt Milano is definitely something that hurts. Very severe looking injury. You really want to see him continue to develop. Taron Johnson goes on the IR along with him this week. So shut down the rookie slot corner for us. Greg, have you heard anything on LaShawn McCoy this week? I haven't been updated or seeing anything. Where's he at? Probably not going to go with Keith Ford coming up.
Yeah, I think that's a good indicator. He did not practice. I know from some of the different areas that I've heard their interpretation of it. I know Stefan Ubel on ESPN was talking about how not only was he out after the second play, but they declared him out for the game in the first half without even going back into the locker room to evaluate. She said that's usually a pretty clear indicator that this is not a minor tweak and then he'll be right back. So she advised she was moving forward, assuming he was not playing. So I think, she's as plugged into at a high level as anybody on just interpreting that information. He has not practiced. I was looking to see in the kind of language that we've talked about before that McDermott will use sometimes, where sometimes he'll say day to day, sometimes he'll say week to week. He just said limited in what they were doing. So I think that they're going to be pretty guarded with the information of whether he's playing or not. But I am going to assume that calling up Keith Ford from the practice squad was a pretty good indicator that we're not going to expect him to play and that he's there. Although I was surprised Chris Ivory was a full participant in practice today with no limitations. So that was certainly interesting. So my guess is we're going to see Keith Ford there probably in a backup third running back role, but active, but Marcus Murphy from a passing game standpoint and Ivory is the primary.
Yeah, I know fans on Twitter were excited because Keith Ford had a decent summer. I think he might be one of those guys like a Brandon Riley where people got a little overexcited for what he actually produced this summer. So I wouldn't get too excited. I wouldn't expect to see a lot of Keith Ford this weekend. I think Marcus Murphy will just get a little bit more touches. He'll get those Chris Ivory touches, which wasn't a lot. What's going on with Derek Anderson, man? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we're talking about like a month and a half long concussion here at this point. Are the Bills tricking the system here, or is he really? I mean, I know people have said that on Twitter, but isn't the NFL and the NFLPA involved in the concussion protocol? I wouldn't think they'd be able to just trick the system.
Absolutely not. That would be illegal and against the NFL rules. So of course that's not what they're doing. I will say that
it's a long concussion.
Out of any element from an injury standpoint, the one that in theory would be able to be manipulated is the concussion protocol. It's a series of tests. It's a series of responses that you give from a baseline test you take at the beginning of the year to indicate that you are back at a capacity to be able to re-enter normal practice and normal play. So if a player had decided that, hey, I can still contribute in the positional room and being around the team, but I don't really want to suit up on Sunday and play, he could give the responses that he knows would not be of a passing nature and could then continually fail the exam and stay within the concussion protocol. I have no way to know that that's what's happening and would never imply that that's what Derek Anderson is doing, but that assumption has certainly been there that he is now in his 6th week of concussion protocol that may be what's happening. So, again, I'll never mess around with somebody else's health and whether they want to go out there and have some monster come tackle you. But, I think that it's fair that he likes the role he's having as that veteran in the quarterback room and doesn't have a lot of interest in suiting up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't blame him. I don't think he had interest in suiting up when he signed. Kind of got thrown into it. So I'm going to let you, since you're one of us, I'm going to let you go ahead and you pick where we start here with the Lions. What side of the ball, what unit should we talk about first?
I will say I do want to comment about Derek Anderson really fast. I noticed him on the injury report, like on the ticker of the, on TV, and it was like going across, and I was like, dude, he's had a concussion for like a month. What the hell is going on? Like, that was my thought too. So that's funny that you guys brought that up. But, man, let's start with the defense. I think probably a lot of people want to start with your offense. We can start with, my defense and we can go from there.
Perfect. So talk about what you see your defense up against the Buffalo offense. Where do you think that, this super entertaining game that we're talking about here, where do you think your defense has the strength on us?
Well, I'll start with just up the middle. I mean, Damon Harrison has been a fantastic addition.
Snacks.
Yes, Snacks has been fantastic for this defense, and he has really turned this run defense around. They were one of the worst run defenses in the league. They had allowed the 26th worst run defense in the league, and now since he's arrived, they're in the top 5 as far as like the last 5 or 6 weeks. They might be even the top, but they've been like allowing close to 50 yards on the ground every game, whereas before they were allowing well over 100. They were allowing, about 5.3 yards per carry. Now they've been allowing about 3.5 yards per carry every single game. So he's been a big piece. So whether it is Shady, running the football, or Chris Ivory or Murphy or whoever, or even Keith Ford, where they're at right now, it seems as if, stopping the run, they should be fine and they should have success doing it. But it doesn't really matter because Josh Allen is your best running back. I don't care what anybody says. And he's been fantastic as far as running the football goes. So that's something that scares me a little bit. How can we stop him? It seems like we've always struggled putting a spy on a quarterback, whether it was Cam Newton or Russell Wilson. And I think the same is going to happen here with Josh Allen. But I will say, throwing to Darius Slay, throwing at his side, because he normally lines up. He'll go anywhere, but he's normally aligned on the right side of the offense or as a left corner for our defense. And he normally does a good job, but I don't want to sit here and say he's big play Slay and that he has been a shutdown corner all year, because he hasn't been. He's struggled in areas of the field all over, and he's allowed receptions and everything else just like every other defensive back. But he does lead the way with 3 interceptions on the year. The Lions only have 6 interceptions on the season, and they lost their best pass rusher in Ziggy Ansah. So I think if you attack the left side, that's normally where Ziggy rushes the quarterback and plays, defensive end. If you can stop, anything that's happening over there, and you can, create stuff, whether it's in space or just throw to the defensive back that's on that side, it would probably be Mike Ford or Nevin Lawson. Neither of them are very good. Nevin Lawson is not an NFL defensive back. Why he's on our team, I don't know. Probably because we neglect the defensive back position every single year. We haven't drafted a first-round cornerback since 1998 when we took Terry Fair, and that was the pick before Randy Moss. So maybe that's why they don't do it anymore. They're like, well, we can't pass on a potential Randy Moss. But, I mean,
so that's why you took all those receivers.
Exactly. 3 straight years in a row. But no, there's really no threat. Jarrett Davis is okay in the middle. If Devin Kennard doesn't play, if Deshaun Hand doesn't play, it will simply be on Snacks to make something happen up front, which, I mean, he's only one guy. He can only do so much. He's really only playing first and second down. So the injuries are long. There's not much to be excited about for our defense. You guys should be okay. I'm not saying you're going to put up 40 points, but, I mean, to put up 23 points like he did against the Jets, you should be able to do it against the Bills or against the Lions. I'm sorry.
It was a real shame to hear with Ziggy Ansah being out. He was a really young, talented guy. I'm excited to see what you guys do with him next year. Is that somebody you think that will be brought back? I know he's someone at the top of a lot of people's free agent list.
I don't want him back. I didn't even want him back this year. I didn't want to franchise tag him. I mean, there was a lot of reports on him. What is his real age? I mean, there was a serious article in a newspaper about how old he is. There's reports saying like he might be 31, 32 years of age, but he's listed at like 28 or 29. Some people think he's about 2 or 3 years older than what he actually is. And that's why the injuries are starting to pile up for him. It could be true. I don't know. It could just be, here, take my click. But the injuries are really piling up, and a guy that's making $17.5 million a year with his production just for this year and last year, just not worth it. If the Bill, like, let's just say the Bills, for an example, if they were to go out and say, hey, we'll give this guy, such and such, then okay, maybe. But he's only got 4 sacks this year. He's only started 2 games. He's just so injury prone that it's just not worth it. And really, I guess Romeo Okwara, I think I said that right. He's probably the biggest threat off the edge. He's got 6.5 sacks this year. He's been a really nice free agent find for them, but I don't think Ziggy will be back.
Interesting. That is interesting. So, Greg, you hear him talking about this defense a little bit. The first thing that pops into my mind, being a Bills fan, is he talks about the interior line. Really, none of our line is good on the offensive side of the ball. So, does that concern you? Where are your concerns as he's talking about that versus the offense, high-powered offense that the Bills have been putting out?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's certainly concerning, especially the interior. Snacks Harrison is someone who's going to be able to simply walk back Ryan Groy. I think Groy anchors a little bit better than Bodine, but his technique is certainly lacking. So Snacks Harrison, someone who's going to be able to just walk him back and control him. As Russell had said, it's certainly arguable who the Bills' best running threat is, but I was actually surprised to hear you mention that about the quarterbacks. I know that I saw that stat come out earlier. The Lions have only given up 62 yards to quarterbacks rushing all season, and that's including games against, like you said, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, Trubisky, 2 games with Trubisky. So being able to have that, I don't know if that's just happenstance that the teams didn't need to run, or if that was some element of front seven, but now knowing that a lot of those guys who were there initially, especially some of the defensive linemen, Deshaun Hand, and, depending on who else is going to be able to play, that could certainly lead to maybe some opportunity. But the Bills line struggled so badly last week that I think that whether it's somebody like Aquara, or I don't know if Ashawn Robinson or Ricky Jean-Francois who fills in if Hand's out, but there's still someone who, Mills and Miller and Groy have just struggled to such a large extent. And Teller had an okay game, but multiple penalties. And that's even bringing down Dawkins. Across the board, the entire line is really struggling to be able to put together anything consistently. So I guess it's encouraging that there's that many injuries and maybe they have an opportunity, but you're also talking about NFL caliber guys stepping in and hungry to get some good film up there to be able to try to make a name for themselves. So I certainly don't look at that as being some great positive to be able to step forward and all of a sudden take over.
While we're talking about the Bills line, we talked about this a little bit last week. I think it'll be a common theme here running into the end of the season. I don't particularly see it happening, but wanted to get your thoughts. Do you think we see any changes to anybody on the line, or do you think they're just going to kind of run this thing into the ground as long as people are healthy? Or are we going to start to see guys get a shot and get something on film?
I'd be really surprised, and I know I put this out on Twitter on a couple of things, especially some of the poor film that was out there. I know Joe B put out a tweet showing Mills and Miller embarrassing themselves, and I just want to warn people, a lot of times I think people use the cliche, oh, it can't get any worse. It can. Okay. It can get worse. And in the offensive line, if it gets worse, if we were to roll, and the idea would be, hey, we're seeing Keith Ford brought up. We're seeing, a lot of playing time for Levi Wallace and a lot of looks for Robert Foster and Isaiah McKenzie. And that's great. The youth movement there is relatively low risk. If we make that move and bring in Ike Botger and we go in and bring, some of the elements with Connor McDermott, all of a sudden, that's Josh Allen's health at risk. And when we look at how rough it already was, if McDermott olays somebody and lets Aquara come through and lay out Josh Allen, and all of a sudden we're dealing with an injury or putting him at risk, that's not worth it. So I think that we need to be careful assuming that just because Miller and Mills are bad, and they're bad, that doesn't mean that it can't possibly get worse. So yeah. I don't want to see experimentation on the offensive line. I trust their judgment. If we do see Butker or McDermott play, that's fine. And I trust that they think that they're equal or better than, or they really do give them the best chance. But as far as it's just, I want to evaluate the young guys and see them play, not when it puts Josh Allen at risk.
Yeah. And you saw that, 2 quick thoughts on that. You saw that if anyone watched the mic'd up that the Bills put out this week, it was Sean McDermott. And during that mic'd up, there was a section where Josh Allen was out scrambling. He's like, protect him, kind of yelling at the offensive line, like, you got to protect him, guys. So we know that by that, they know that there's a problem there. I think one thing that I've talked about for a couple of years now is even though we don't necessarily like Castillo, we have to trust that these guys are evaluating the talent. They have their hands on this talent every single day. They have had them since the summer. So the fact that they haven't made any changes with as bad as the line play has been by certain individuals tells you that the guys behind them aren't good enough to make them feel confident to put them in front of Josh Allen. So as bad as the guys are, like Greg, like you're saying, it could, it can't get any worse. It could get worse. And the people that would know the best are the guys that have their hands on these offensive linemen every single day.
They would have done it when they swapped Teller and Dukas.
Dukas, right?
If there was somebody else showing that potential, if Ike Botger was showing that kind of potential, they absolutely would have brought him in at the same time and put down Dukas and Miller. And they obviously didn't see that. So I anticipate this is the same 5 linemen we're going to see the rest of the year, short of an injury.
Yeah, and I think it was funny because Russ said, what did you say? Like, if the Bills can score 23 points, I think he threw that number out there.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
That's how we have been actually talking about the Bills almost every single week on this podcast, especially early on when we had the historically bad offense happening. Obviously, things have gotten a little bit better, but I would say if another team scores 14 to 17 points on the Bills, the game's over. There's no coming back from that. So this game, when we're talking about two teams like that, this could be an incredibly ugly game. Greg, what do you think as far as, if Shady's out, there isn't a lot as far as guys around the NFL. Obviously, Bills fans know and are excited about some of the youth movement we have, but none of these guys are productive NFL players. Who is the kind of guy that's going to step up and have a game and help Josh Allen out?
I mean, it's hard to assume anything outside of the standard fare. Our running game has been so poor because of the line. And I got into that with a couple of people that have really been going at Shady. And don't get me wrong, there's been some, indecision and some, lackadaisical effort to hit the hole and trying to bounce a lot of things out. And I get that. That's his style. But when he was out, Chris Ivory didn't do anything either. That 12 carries for 42 yards, that's the line Shady's been putting up. So I don't think it's necessarily the talent of the running back. I get it that when Chris Ivory hits the hole hard, it's encouraging, but he doesn't really do anything after that. Marcus Murphy has his moments here or there, but he's very limited and showed that when he got into further opportunities. The reason Keith Ford couldn't make a splash after having some nice runs is the only thing he could do was run. He couldn't catch the ball. He was horrible in pass protection, and you can't put Josh Allen at risk there. So I know both Dable and McDermott specifically spoke to his efforts in pass protection. McDermott touched on it in his presser today. That's encouraging that Ford has done that, but I don't expect anything in particular to step forward, especially with the improvements that Russell touched on in the Lions' run defense. So I anticipate it's going to be similar. We're going to hand it off enough to keep them honest. Most of the rushing yards will probably come from scrambles from Allen, and the rest of it's going to be in the passing game. But honestly, that's what we want to evaluate anyways.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I want to get into this real quick with Russ because I want to talk about the offense and talk about his frustrations with Jim Bob Cooter, because a couple of years ago, he was a hot name. We were hearing people wanted him as an offensive coordinator and as a coach. And the way Russ is talking about him, he might not have a job for long as an offensive coordinator. But before we get too deep into that, like I said earlier, our own Rob Quinn at one point had written an article kind of saying, comparing a little bit Josh Allen to Stafford. I would love if Josh Allen's ceiling was Matthew Stafford. Stafford's been a pretty polarizing quarterback in the league, being taken where he was, hasn't had led the franchise to the success that I think you want a person picked at that pick to take you. But I would totally be happy if Josh Allen even turned into close to the quarterback that Matthew Stafford is. For Bills fans going through this process, I mean, Bills fans some of them are already saying this guy's no good. Let's draft another quarterback. What type of patience has it been being a Lions fan? And what type of patience do you need? And what can you tell Bills fans about that patience of letting a guy evolve and going with the ups and downs of the quarterback like that?
Well, it's hard. I don't know if you want me talking about Josh Allen, because when I was in Mobile, I was writing a piece about him after I saw one of his practices at the Senior Bowl, and I was just so disappointed, I guess. I saw all the big media talking about him, saying he's this, he's that, and then I watch him, and I'm like, dude, this guy's and I was hungry at the time, so I was like, he's like a bologna sandwich with ketchup on it. It's awful. It's terrible. And that's what I compared him to. And people were like, I was writing about it. People were like, dude, you're kind of going over the top with this. And I was like, I know, but I had to roll with it. But Josh Allen to me is not Matthew Stafford. He's got the big arm because they were able to throw it deep down the field, but they're very different. Josh Allen is more mobile. Josh Allen's got a bigger frame, and Josh Allen could very well be I don't want to say it, but he could be a Cam Newton type of quarterback with the way he's being utilized. And Matthew Stafford's not that. But for Bills fan, just be patient, because in Stafford's first 2 years in the NFL, granted he was injured, he had suffered a shoulder injury, he had suffered a torn ACL, he was very injured, but he was, coming back in 2011 at 23 years of age. Going into that season in 2011, he had 3 wins and 10 losses. So there wasn't a whole lot to be confident about, other than the fact that, hey, this guy's kind of tough. He comes out in 2011 and he goes 10-6. Then he goes 4-12. Then he goes 7-9. Then he's 11-5, 7-9, and then consecutive 9-7 seasons. And here we are at 5-8. It's not simply just on Stafford in Detroit, and it's not simply just on Josh Allen in Buffalo. You don't have Tom Brady. Nobody's saying that these guys are Tom Brady. If that's your expectation, you need to read a book about football. Tom Brady is 1 in a million. Tom Brady is a different animal. And I get it. You guys have to play against him twice a year. He's been haunting you for the last 17 years. You guys hate him and despise him. I understand it. But,
good. You're familiar.
Yes. I kind of know the backstory, right? But you can't go in and expect these quarterbacks, whether it is Stafford or Allen, to be that. You can't do it. And with Stafford, I guess I throw every excuse out there for him, because I don't think we're ever going to see another quarterback in the entire, from 2000 to 2009 when we drafted him. We saw 9 different quarterbacks. I saw Mike McMahon. I saw John Kitna. I saw Jeff Garcia, Dante Culpepper, Dan Orlovsky. So many different quarterbacks come in and out of this system. Sean Hill. There's so many different names. We finally had a guy that was consistent, had the talent level. Maybe he didn't have enough to go over it looks like he doesn't have enough to go over the top. But if you put some talent around him, like a Golden Tate, which you took away his best weapon, his favorite target, no doubt about it, you took it away, and then you're like, all right, go out there and play football, win me a football game. I mean, ever since that moment, ever since they traded him away, it seems like Stafford just kind of been like, man, why even show up to work? I'm just going to show up, get paid. So it's, he's a guy that I think is frustrated with where the offense is in. He's frustrated where the organization is. Josh Allen, he's a rookie. He's not going to know, the life of a Bills fan. He just got there. Let him prove himself. And yeah, maybe it's not reflecting into wins and, what you want to see. But at 4-9, you guys are better off tanking and losing the rest of the way. This is just about him gaining experience. I know a Bills fan's not going to want to hear that, but being 4-9 or ending the season 4-12 looks a lot better in the draft rather than 7-9, because that's going to be all the difference in the world of getting you an offensive tackle that you need, like Jonah Williams, or an offensive tackle that you're going to reach for, or a receiver that you know nothing about, because receivers in the first round are hit or miss. And if you're picking 16th or you're picking 7th, you're going to force your hand. So be patient with them. Don't worry about wins and losses right now. Just worry about him not getting hurt and worry about him performing to the expectations of what a rookie quarterback is. I mean, look at Josh Rosen. He was, taken 10th overall, and he's not living up to the expectations, but you have to be patient with the process. So as I see you always talking, Aaron, in the general Slack chat there, trust the process. You have to trust it. You have to believe in it. And I will say Josh Allen is making a believer out of me. I mean, He really is. He is better than I thought he was going to be.
His floor, and Tim Graham wrote a great piece for The Athletic right after the game last week. And I think I was very adamant about not drafting him, but I think for almost everybody, and a lot of the draft analysts on Twitter, I think his floor is a lot higher than a lot of us assumed it was going to be. I think he's at least a NFL caliber quarterback. Whether that's a good one or not, we don't know. That could be just like a Tyrod Taylor, just good enough to continue to stick on rosters. We're not sure yet, but it's higher than I thought it was. One thing, just so you know, in the future, we don't want to say Jonah when it's too much around Greg. I don't want to get him too excited about that.
That's my number one draft. I desperately want Jonah Williams protecting the blind side of my man, Josh Allen.
He makes the most sense for that team because of, Brian Dabble, obviously, and you guys can check it out on cover1.net. I wrote an in-depth piece about the technique of Jonah Williams and just how technically gifted he is. He is the best offensive tackle. Don't listen to what any other site out there that says Greg Little or Max Sharping or Yadni Kajust. don't listen to those sites. Those are talented offensive tackles, but the guy you want is Jonah Williams. He's a natural fit for your offense. You could play him at left tackle. I think he's best suited at right tackle. And because you do have Deion Dawkins there, you play him opposite or however you want to do it. It doesn't matter. Brian Daboll will figure it out with them, and you'll be good to go. But he's a best fit because of Daboll. He protects your quarterback, your investment, and the offense will start going right. Don't worry about the weapons. Josh Allen has that deep ball. He has that arm. He'll get it into spots that other quarterbacks can't get it into. He has Robert Foster. You're seeing what he's doing with that. I mean, the guy's a speedster going vertical up the field. He'll make it happen. So don't worry too much about that stuff. Worry about building something up front and continuing what you do well, and that's running the football. I mean, let's be honest. The Bills are a run-first team, and they do it maybe better than at least half the league for sure.
There's Eric always talks about that the one – obviously we've been reassured by Josh Allen in that what we didn't know coming in, all the intangibles and those kind of things. And what you see a lot of times when you have a guy that's physically gifted, and obviously from the highlights, we can see that Josh Allen is incredibly physically gifted. A lot of times those kind of guys rely on that and have always just said, I'll just let my athleticism take over. He's incredibly humble. He's incredibly hardworking. He's very self-aware and self-critical of things. He's the coach's dream up there at the podium with all the nonsense, gibberish and coach speak. But he's then incredibly hardworking from a focus and talent standpoint. So some of the guys that people tried to compare them to, I've actually not pushed away when they said Jamarcus Russell and Jeff George and people like that. Yeah, if you took Jamarcus Russell and gave him a ridiculous work ethic and a really good attitude and made him coachable, maybe Josh Allen can be what he was supposed to be and what he had the potential to be. So, I get it. Maybe he turns out not to be great. And you brought up Stafford. Stafford was under 60% completion percentage 4 of his first 5 years. That's a great trend to be able to see, hey, is it possible over time to improve? Matt Ryan did a similar track, that it's not impossible to improve that. Now, he's never going to become Drew Brees at 77%, but it doesn't mean that just because he's in the low 50s now doesn't mean it can't improve as he goes forward. So there's a lot of things that are reassuring. Aaron and I were on the same page. I was desperately in the anyone but Josh Allen camp going into the draft, and I've been won over that, hey, maybe we did stumble onto something here.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I want to get more back into the Lions here because it was surprising to hear you say how much you dislike Jim Bob Cooter because of how hyped he was a couple years ago. What is going wrong over there in Detroit? Is it the bringing in Patricia or things not going well there? What's going on with Cooter? What's going on with the offense? What's it look like for this matchup and then into the future for the Lions?
To be honest, I've never been a big fan of him. I've never really been a big fan of this offense. I think it's very one-dimensional. I think it's very predicting. You can go in and look at it and just kind of know what's going to happen. They ran a lot of stuff out of pistol, and there was stuff that I was doing last year, summer study stuff, watching the Lions, and I noticed certain things when they were out of pistol. I kind of saw what direction they were going to be running. So, if you can kind of follow along with my hands here, Stafford's here and a little bit offset to the right was the running back. And that was the direction they were going. They were going to the right. If they were going left, it would be like that. And that's what defenses were seeing. And then probably the same calls, but then there was a game earlier this year. They were playing the Bears, Roquan Smith, number 58. Stafford says, check 58. Check 58. I would assume check 58 means, hey, watch blitz, something along those lines. Guess who gets the sack? Number 58, Roquan Smith. So, I know Roquan's very talented, but you mean to tell me nothing happens there? And then just passing the football, Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, constantly running comeback routes. They always run these routes 12 to 15 yards down the field because Stafford does have the big arm and he can put it in spots that, let's be honest, some quarterbacks can't put it in, and that's fine. But I normally don't watch this team and see a slant route be thrown. You don't see it. You don't see them attack the middle, and that a lot of it I think is because when Jim Caldwell was hired in and he brought in JBC to be the OC, it was simply because their main mission was to make it to where Matthew Stafford doesn't turn the football over, because Matthew Stafford a few years ago, and I'll pull this up for everybody, he was averaging, 17, 19, 16, 17, and 19 interceptions in 3 consecutive years from 2011 to 2013. And then they brought in Jim Caldwell, and it took a total turn. It was a lot better. He only had 12 interceptions, 13, and then consecutive years with 10, and he's got 11 right now. And a lot of that is, with those comeback routes, you're throwing it towards the sideline, so it has a lesser chance of being intercepted unless the corner completely jumps the route. But when you don't have the proper protection, the offensive line is consistently hurt, you don't address the offensive line in the right way. Granted, Tyrell Crosby has been looks like a good addition. He shouldn't have been a 5th-round pick, but you add him. So if you can continue to address the offensive line and give your quarterback time, things will be different. But overall, their offense is just so one-dimensional. And when you had Golden Tate, you kind of knew it was going to be a short pass, let him do yards after the catch and create. And you took that away. So now really your main focus is gone. And now you don't have anything. And Kerryon Johnson has been kind of a steady playmaker running the football. He's been out the last 2 weeks with a knee sprain. So it's just so predictable when they get up there. And when you watch them against the Cardinals, you just saw punt after punt after punt, 3-and-out after 3-and-out. And it's just like, it's time for JBC to go. You can see the offense. There's no urgency. There's no real, when you watch that offense, you can kind of feel like when you're watching a game, like, okay, this team is buying into the offense, whether it's a slow, let's get our feet wet, get on the field, or score fast and continue hurry pace or whatever. You can kind of sense that with the Lions, there's just nothing. Maybe it is Stafford. I think part of it is they don't want to play for this offensive coordinator anymore.
Oh, that's tough, man. When Tate became available, he's been one of my targets, obviously, for the Bills in free agency next year. I'm not sure that he's going to sign with the Eagles, but what do you think his future is, and why do you think they just moved on from him? Were they not going to be able to re-sign him in free agency, and they just decided to get what they could before that happened?
I'll tell you, it looks really dumb right now because the salary cap's increased by $10 million. So it looks like a bad move, but it was a business decision. When at the time you didn't know what the cap was going to be for next year, you saw it and you said, okay, well, odds are we're not going to re-sign this guy. He's on the wrong side of 30 now. He's a slot receiver. Do you really want to pay a guy 3-4 years for $10-11 million a year to be a slot receiver in this offense? Sure. But you see what he's doing with Philly. It's been so hit or miss. He's just not a fit for them, and they don't know how to utilize him. So maybe they do get a draft pick out of it, and maybe he does come back to Detroit. But to be honest, I just don't see it happening. So I think Golden Tate's a guy that's probably going to go to a Super Bowl contender. Maybe he goes back to Seattle, but I think he's going to be looking to win a championship more than anything.
So not Buffalo. Then is what
no, not at all.
Oh, dang. Well, way to kill that for me there.
Well, maybe. I mean, you never know. I never thought that who was it, T.O.? I never thought he was going to sign,
sure.
And he did.
Just love I've always been a fan of his and the production. I got into it with a bunch of people on Twitter because he's like you kind of said, on the wrong side of 30. I said, guys like that find ways to produce. He's always been productive. If he gets on the right team, he's going to go out there and produce. The Eagles have their own issues this year that we won't get into on this show too much. But I think if he gets on the right team, he's still got a couple years of production left because he's a gamer, man. He just knows how to get it done. Greg, defensively, we kind of know what to expect out of the Bills against whoever they're playing against. I think they can stand up to almost any offense in this league, and we've seen that here throughout the season so far. Some of these injuries that were changing things a little bit. I want to get your perspective on, we've got no Milano going into this game. What's that depth at linebacker going to look like? How are the Bills going to play that? And then obviously Johnson's been out a couple weeks now, but how does that impact things moving forward here? With this defense and what we should expect for this game and into the rest of the season here.
Yeah, I think we're still going to be strong relatively. Obviously, we've been without Taron Johnson for a couple games. I think Denzel Rice did okay. They played Raphael Bush and kind of the big nickel there as a third safety. One that worries me is Milano, and that, are we now going to put Zoe in coverage and he's going to be more in that area? Are we going to see some, Julian Stanford play a little bit more? Does Corey Thompson get an opportunity? That makes me a little bit nervous. You have your Theo Riddicks, you have, shifty guys if Bruce Ellington plays. I think that I'm comfortable with Trey covering Galladay. Galladay still can high point it and probably go up over top of White for a big play here or there. But overall, I think Trey is going to be fine. So I think the defense will be okay. Detroit hasn't had a running game other than that stretch where Kerryon Johnson got going a little bit. So I think they'll be all right. But again, some of the injuries on the offensive line are adding up. So, it's a war of attrition this late into the NFL season, trying to figure out who's still surviving and who's still out there. So, the Bills' defensive injuries against the Lions' offensive injuries are probably a net neutral. So it's just kind of trying to figure out, can they get someone like Lorenzo Alexander isolated on Theo Riddick? That makes me a little bit nervous. Can they get someone like Ellington in the slot with whoever is filling in for Taron Johnson? There's a chance for some isolated one-on-one matchups that make me more nervous than when we had our full complement with Milano and Taron Johnson and those guys. So I'm a little bit concerned that Stafford's going to be able to find someone in an isolated one-on-one, despite what play calls Jim Bob Cooter plays. I just like to say the words Jim Bob Cooter.
Me too.
It's something that I don't know that I anticipate it being a huge problem, but I also don't think that they're going to pitch a shutout, because when you have backup guys filling in who haven't been communicating, especially in the secondary, that kind of communication and handing things off. Taron Johnson was awesome at that, in communicating back and forth with Micah Hyde and Poyer, and now you're going to have new guys stepping in to do that, getting to know them. So, we need to be able to figure out how we can mask that and still survive.
Yeah, you point out communication. That's really my biggest fear here in this game and moving forward, because Taron Johnson was really good at it, and Matt Milano was also pretty good at it. Obviously, a young linebacker who plays very aggressively, gets stuck sometimes, but you had guys that were used to communicating with each other in that nickel spot. They're not just communicating with the safeties and the other cornerbacks. They are passing stuff off to linebackers. So now you're adding more kind of kinks into that with a new linebacker coming in, a new, guys that maybe aren't as athletic coming in that can't, if there is a mistake in communication, can't make up for it athletically. So that definitely has a huge concern for me. And you have a guy that's seeing everything that there is to see, like Stafford. He's going to see that and see these miscommunications and definitely take advantage of it. And so will the quarterbacks that remain on the schedule. So you hate to see that. And along with miscommunications and guys not knowing where to be, you start to put people in danger and stuff too. Guys are playing out of position, guys, playing a little bit differently. So I don't like to see that once injuries start to roll up. It kind of, that's where injury bugs come in a little bit. So I have a lot of caution with. It's crazy because they're two young guys, but Taron Johnson and Milano being out are big parts of this defense, and the communication they brought is definitely going to be key moving forward. So we've been talking a lot about special teams here, unfortunately for the Bills. How about you guys? Is there anything to talk about or any concerns that the Bills should have with as bad as our special teams have been? I feel like everybody's special teams look really good against us.
Probably about 6-7 weeks ago, we could have talked about it. We fired our special teams coach because we were so bad. And
I'm just so jealous right now.
Yeah. No, like we had, punt returns against us, kick returns, just teams were getting in so much better field position. And I know, so if people are listening and you have a young kid that plays football, and if they only play special teams, tell them that's the most important job on the field, because it really is. Like, you need to get that better field position. You need to make sure that you're pinning a team deep, whether it's punting the football or in kickoff, kick return, whatever. For us, we don't really have a threat as far as returning. At one point we had Amir Abdullah returning kicks. We let him go. Who's out there now? I think it's Bruce Ellington. So we just don't really have anything. Like Ellington has speed. He is fast. He can move in the open field. But I would be shocked if we had anything happen as far as somebody that, takes a punt to the house or takes, a kick return. It happens very rarely for our team.
Well, you're playing the Buffalo Bills, so there's going to be some opportunities for you there. Very jealous that you guys fired your coordinator. If you've seen me in the Slack channel, I've been adamant.
Wait. Hold on. You're allowed to fire special teams coordinators?
Oh, 100%.
Dang it. I swear Danny Crossman survived for 3 coaching staffs, from Doug Marrone through Rex Ryan into Sean McDermott. I just assumed there was some kind of contractual obligation in the CBA that I wasn't aware of, that special teams coordinators could not be fired. That it's just it's like an appointment to the Supreme Court. It's just a lifetime appointment.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works, man.
Well,
so I'm jealous because I'm all about getting rid of this guy because, like you said, I was at the game last week and they gave up multiple 40 plus. I don't even know what the returns were, but Miami was on our side of the field majority of the game due to special teams returns, and it just killed. I don't care how good your defense is and what type of offense you're going up against in the NFL. You're giving up free points. You're putting people in scoring range, and it's just going to kill you. I don't care what's going on. So, Greg,
for me to put it in perspective, for people that want like statistics and numbers on it, we have returned 19 punts this year. We have an average of 6 yards per return. We've returned 17 kickoffs this year. We averaged 24.3 yards for return. Our longest punt return on the year was 50 yards, and our longest kick return was 45 yards. And the 45-yard kick return was from Jamal Agnew, who's on IR. And then TJ Jones did the punt return, which I think got us inside like the 10. So, I mean, it is what it is, and it probably led to 3 points or an interception. So don't be like too down on yourself if looking at
makes me feel a little bit better.
We're down.
This is going to be such a bad game. Like, it's so disappointing. It's going to be so bad.
It's going to be terrible.
Oh my god.
At least the Bills are wearing the Color Rush uniforms. I don't know if that's better or not.
I don't think it's better.
I don't think that's any better, actually. Yeah.
What is that? The all blue? So we're
all red.
Oh, so we're going to be wearing the all silvers then, probably. So that's kind of cool, I guess.
Is at least that
kind of Christmassy?
Yeah. So, Greg, obviously there's issues with the special teams, but Danny Crossman doesn't have anything to do necessarily with the issues that we've seen the last 2 weeks with Stephen Hauschka. Is it just bringing in a new punter holder there, or is something in Stephen Hauschka's head? I know last week he took that big hit. I'm wondering if some injury had something to do with what was going on there, but it's very out of the norm, very abnormal performance that we're seeing from Stephen Hauschka. Can we expect more of that, or should we just anticipate him going back to where he was?
I mean, it's hard to say. He took a nasty, dirty, cheap shot from Henry Anderson. I hope to hear that he gets a fine tomorrow when those announcements come out. I don't want to assume that he's just okay. He was pretty limited the rest of that game. He's been money on long field goals, and he couldn't even get the ball there from 54. He never kicked off deep the rest of the game. He did not practice today. I haven't heard them bringing in anyone else for a workout, and they wouldn't have brought up both Keith Ford and Dean Marlowe. They would have kept one of those spots open for a kicker. So I'm going to take that as a somewhat reassuring step that maybe he's eligible to at least be out there and play. Maybe we're a little limited and don't go for long field goals and try to protect that a little bit more. But I'm going to read their actions as an indication that he's okay and at least going to be able to play in the game, if at least a little limited.
Okay. Let's go around the horn real quick. We'll start with you, Russ. Before we kind of sign off here, let's get our predictions for this fantastic game that we're about to witness this weekend. Kind of give us a quick score and just kind of how you think the game will go. Shoot, man.
3-2. No, I'm just kidding. No. So I was on the Rockpile Report, as I was telling you guys before the show. I was doing that before I got on here. So I said 20-17 Buffalo Bills. I'll stick with that. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if it was 17-14, 16-13, something like that. I do think some points will be scored, but I don't think it's like the over-under. I think it's 38.5. I don't think it's going to reach that. So bet the under.
And Mr. Gambler over there, do you agree, Greg?
I'm torn. I do think that the Bills are favored for a reason. You look at the Vegas rankings, and I think they have the Bills 26th and the Lions 24th. So I think the 2.5 points is about right. I think if it was in Detroit, they'd be the same way, and they'd be a 2.5, 3-point favorite as well. It's pretty much the regular home field advantage. I do think there's a little bit more injury issues with the Lions and the Bills. That's a little bit in favor, but not as much. You brought it up earlier, Aaron. We had a really great start to the year from an injury standpoint. It's kind of catching up now. So I'm going to say that I do think both teams get a couple bigger plays than what we would have seen early in the year because of how many people are backups in there now. Maybe we see some big play potential that you wouldn't have seen if both teams had their full complement of healthy players. So I'm going to assume that we see something closer to that Jets game last week, and that we're going to see something like I'm going to say 24-20 Buffalo. I do think that they can pull out the win at home. I think that you'll see both teams give up a couple big scores, and that we'll see some back and forth. I think the Lions may take the lead at some point. I think it's going to be a competitive game, and it's going to come down to the end.
Interesting. I think, Russ had mentioned my score there when he was talking. I think it's going to be a 17-14 game, and unfortunately in favor of the Bills. I would kind of like Russ said, I don't mind the idea of losing out as long as the players that we want to see develop continue to develop. I think you can do both things, lose and develop. Mm-hmm. But I'm never going to be mad at a win as a fan. But I think it's going to be very ugly, 17-14. I think there'll probably be some big defensive touchdowns or something like that. Something ugly is going to happen. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game at all, but I'll sit and trudge through it. And my notes will probably finish sometime in the third quarter when I'm frustrated watching the game, and just finish it and get ready for the show. So I think 17-14. So I think we're all pretty close there with thinking that this isn't going to be the very best game of the week to watch. But
what's crazy is if you guys would have just won out of the bye week, you had a win against Jacksonville. If you would have won 2 more, you would be a 6-7 football team. You'd be right in the thick of this playoff hunt right now. And it's like
the Bills live in the hunt. Yeah. That's where we live, in the hunt.
Yeah, well, I know, but it's like it could have easily been 6-7. Like, you should have beaten Miami. You should have beaten the Jets. And here you are, a winnable game against the Lions. Like, sure, you probably wouldn't win in New England, but maybe. You never know.
You never know. You got to play the game.
Exactly. And then the end of the year against Miami, I mean, your offense looks 10 times better right now than it did before the bye week. Yeah. And it just it's incredible. So I don't know. I hope, I don't like to say it, but I hope the Bills continue to lose. I hope the Lions continue. Can we just tie? Can that be a thing for me?
I don't think that helps anyone. No, we've been talking about that. Neither Aaron and I are wired to, I'm never one of those root for a loss guy. It's not in me. I can't watch the game and really root for my team to lose.
Yeah.
But as soon as the game's over, I'm okay looking at the silver lining and being like, oh, hey, we're 1 game out of the number 1 overall pick. That's interesting.
Exactly.
I'm okay taking that as some solace that, I guess it could be worse.
Especially when Allen's playing well.
That's all I care about.
That just is added silver lining when the young guys are playing well and it's a competitive game that you lose. It's early in the year was bad when guys weren't playing well and we were just getting blown out. That's not fun for anybody. But so Russ, you told us a little bit about you. Where can people find you? What do you got coming up, going on? And I know our fans are going to definitely want to get on following you because I did your draft board last year. It was a great draft board. I had a ton of fun doing it, and you're a great follow for everything draft. So tell us where we can find you and what you got coming along.
Appreciate the kind words. First of all, I'm glad I didn't walk off the show like a Vontae Davis exit or something.
Oh, come on.
I'm just kidding. I had a
cheap shot. It's a cheap shot.
I know. I had to throw it in there. I'm sorry. Look, I went 0-16 before any team did it, so we were cool back then. So, no, follow me on Twitter at Russ NFL Draft. Smash the follow button. I've always got video breakdowns or film breakdowns of guys and things that I'm looking for into the draft. A lot of college tape on there, but occasionally I'll do some player breakdowns for the NFL and pay attention to that. Follow us right here on Spreaker with the Cover One NFL Draft stuff. We record every Tuesday. Again, like I said, if you ever have a question, just reach out to me. If you want it on the podcast, I can put it on there. In me and CP, Christian Page, and now Jordan Reed, we can all discuss it and digest the draft for you. Some content that's coming up, probably some Senior Bowl stuff. I haven't really indulged into it too much as far as written stuff. So I've talked about it, but I want to write about it. I want to focus on some one-on-one matchups with the O-line, defensive line guys that are down there because I love the trenches. I love guys with sand in their pants. And then lastly, you guys need to get the Cover One app if you don't have it now. And, it's not – my spiel is always download the new Cover One app. It's not new anymore. It's been out for like a year, and if you don't have it, you're a loser. So get the Cover One app and search it in your App Store or Google Play. And appreciate you guys having me on, and we'll do this some more.
Awesome. And Greg, what bridge on the internet are you under trolling on these days? Where can we find you at?
Always in the tweetery. Come and find me at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. Love to follow back Bills fans and get into petty arguments. I'm always here for all the petty. So just come and find me. Have a good time. We'll entertain ourselves.
Absolutely. And you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716, all up in Greg's mentions pretty much daily. So you can find me there too. If you're not searching, I'll be there. But we love to interact with you guys. We can't really do this show without you. So the interaction is key to continued success with the show. We appreciate you coming on here, joining the YouTube feed live. If you're here over on YouTube, while you're here, go over and subscribe to the YouTube page. If you haven't already, click the little notifications bell, because whenever we go live, you'll get that notification. You don't just get the podcast, you get all the content that the guys at Cover One do. Eric's always putting stuff up on YouTube. I think we're close to 1,000 videos up on YouTube now loaded, and those videos just continue to get better and better. So make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And like I said, hit that notifications bell. Head over to all your social media networks, follow Cover One. You guys are all smart people here. You're on the internet. You know how to search. Search Cover One. You'll find us. You can find us on all your social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you use, we're there. Can't do the show without you guys. We really appreciate it. Stick with us here through this rough stretch at the end of the season, because it's going to be worth it. I can't wait to get to the off season and have all these guys that we mentioned that are working with Cover One, all these brilliant minds of football, kind of come on and help us talk through what the Bills need to do to take that next step moving forward. So thanks again for your time, guys. Enjoy the game this weekend, and we'll catch you on the post-game show after the game. Thanks, guys.